Captain Rex Murphy had seen some terrible things in his 30-year military career. Plasma burns that could melt through titanium, alien parasites that could burrow through your skull while you were still conscious, politicians. But nothing, and I mean nothing, had prepared him for babysitting duty on mining station Kepler 4422. "Sir, the transport for the Rodriguez kid is prepped and ready," announced Squakes, the station's chief engineer. Now, Squakes was what humans politely called a chitineri, and what everyone else called a 6-foot-tall praying mantis with anxiety issues. His real name was something like Click-Scratch-Whistle-Pop, but Rex had given up on alien pronunciation after the third consonant cluster gave him a migraine. "Great," Rex muttered, adjusting his worn military jacket, because nothing says prestigious career advancement like playing space chauffeur to an 8-year-old. The truth was, Rex had volunteered for this assignment. Well, volunteered in the sense that his commanding officer had given him a choice between escorting one human child to her parents' research station or spending 6 months cataloging supply inventories in the Outer Rim. Rex had been in enough combat zones to know that sometimes retreat was the better part of valor. Besides, how hard could watching one kid be? "Oh, Captain Murphy!" The voice belonged to Blubbert, the station's cook, whose species the Galactic Federation had diplomatically designated as aquatic humanoids, but who looked exactly like a 7-foot-tall blue walrus in a chef's hat. "I have prepared 17 different flavor combinations of nutrition paste for young Mika's journey, including something called pizza flavor, which I do not understand, but the human database assured me children require." Rex rubbed his temples. "Blubbert, it's a 4-hour trip. She doesn't need enough food for a siege." "But Captain," Bluebert's whiskers twitched with concern, "human young are growing creatures. What if she experiences hunger-induced distress? What if her blood sugar drops? What if you're overthinking this?" Rex interrupted. He'd learned that cutting off Blubbert's worry spirals early was essential for maintaining sanity. "Kids are tougher than you think." Commander Threx chose that moment to swagger onto the docking bay, his scales practically gleaming with self-importance. Threx belonged to a species that looked like someone had crossed a Komodo dragon with a drill sergeant, and had all the charm of a tax audit. "Murphy, I still do not understand why we are wasting military resources on a simple civilian transport. Humans coddle their offspring far too much. In my culture, young Ceridians are expected to hunt and survive independently by age 6. "Yeah, well, in my culture we don't eat our own young when food gets scarce," Rex replied dryly. "Different approaches to child-rearing, I guess." Threx's throat sac inflated slightly, which Rex had learned was the equivalent of an annoyed snort. "Mark my words, Murphy, this excessive protection of human young is a sign of species weakness. No wonder humans require such elaborate safety measures." Before Rex could explain exactly what he thought of Threx's opinion, a small voice piped up from behind them. "Are you Captain Murphy? Mom said you were going to take me to see the pretty crystals." Rex turned to see Mika Rodriguez, and immediately understood why the universe had a sense of humor. 8 years old, maybe 4 feet tall, with pigtails that defied several laws of physics and a gap-toothed grin that could power a small solar system. She was dragging a backpack that appeared to weigh more than she did, and cradled in her arms was a small, furry creature that looked like someone had crossed a ferret with a teddy bear and given it too much coffee. "That would be me, kid," Rex said, automatically softening his tone. Something about human children made even the crustiest veterans go a bit mushy. "And who's your friend there?" "This is Nivels," Nico announced proudly. "He's my emotional support animal. Mom says he helps me process my feelings about leaving familiar environments and adapting to new social situations." Rex blinked. "Your emotional support animal has a name that sounds like a breakfast cereal?" "Well, his real name is something longer," Mika said seriously. "But Nibbles is easier to say when I'm upset. He's really good at cuddling, and he makes funny noises when he's happy." As if on cue, Nibbles made a sound somewhere between a purr and a chuckle, fixing Rex with bright, intelligent eyes that seemed far too knowing for a creature supposedly designed for emotional comfort. Squeaks leaned over to examine Nibbles more closely, his compound eyes whirring as they adjusted focus. "Fascinating. I have never seen this species in the xenobiology databases. What is its planet of origin?" "Earth, I think," Mika said with the casual indifference of a child. "Dad found him when they were doing research on the outer colonies. He said Nibbles needed a friend and I needed a friend, so it worked out." Rex felt a small alarm bell go off in the back of his mind. Something about this didn't add up. Dr. Rodriguez was one of the Federation's top xenobiologists. He wouldn't just randomly adopt an unknown species as his daughter's pet. But before Rex could ask any follow-up questions, the departure alarm chimed. "All right, people, let's get this show on the road," Rex announced. "Mika, grab your gear. Squeaks, run final systems check. Blubbert, please tell me you're not actually planning to come with us." "Oh no, Captain, I am remaining on the station," Blubbert replied. "But I have packed extra nutrition paste in case of emergency delays, and some emergency chocolate, and emergency juice boxes, and—" "We get it, Blubbert. Thanks." As they boarded the transport ship Steady Eddie, a converted cargo hauler that had seen better decades, Rex couldn't shake the feeling that this routine escort mission was going to be anything but routine. The ship's sensors had picked up some unusual readings in the outer system, but Command had dismissed them as asteroid interference. Rex had learned a long time ago that when Command dismissed something as routine, that was usually when everything went sideways. "Buckle up, kid," he called to Mika, who was already exploring the ship with the fearless curiosity of human young. "Next stop, your parents' research station." "This is going to be fun," Nico declared, settling into her seat with Nibbles curled in her lap. Rex really should have recognized famous last words when he heard them. 2 hours into what should have been a routine 4-hour milk run, Rex learned why the universe had named an entire law after him. The Steady Eddie's proximity alarm started screaming like Blubbert during a kitchen fire, which was to say loudly, persistently, and with absolutely no regard for anyone's eardrums. "Squeaks, talk to me," Rex barked, his hands already dancing across the control panel with the muscle memory of 3 decades in uniform. "Captain, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace," Squeaks chittered, his compound eyes reflecting the red warning lights. "Configuration suggests Crimson Claw Syndicate vessels. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear." Rex's blood turned to ice water. The Crimson Claw Syndicate wasn't your garden-variety pirates who knocked over cargo haulers for spare parts and gambling money. These were the professionals, the ones who researched their targets, planned their operations, and specialized in one very specific, very lucrative business model. "Hostages." "How many ships?" Rex demanded, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. 7 confirmed contacts, Captain. 3 heavy cruisers, 4 fighter escorts. Squeak's voice climbed an octave with each word. "We are, and I cannot stress this enough, completely outgunned." Rex glanced back at Miko, who was pressed against the viewport with the wide-eyed fascination that only children could maintain in the face of imminent doom. Nibbles had perked up considerably, his small head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. "Well," Rex muttered, "at least it can't get any worse." The universe, apparently taking this as a personal challenge, immediately proved him wrong. The communications array crackled to life, with the kind of voice that suggested its owner gargled with gravel and washed it down with liquid spite. "Transport vessel Steady Eddie, this is Captain Scar of the Crimson Claw Syndicate. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in unpleasant consequences for all parties involved." Rex had met Captain Scar exactly once, during a prisoner exchange 3 years ago, and had walked away with the distinct impression that Scar was the kind of being who considered war crimes more like guidelines than actual rules. The fact that Scar had specifically named their ship meant this wasn't a random encounter. "They knew we were coming," Rex said, more to himself than anyone else. "Someone fed them our flight plan." "Captain," Mika piped up from her seat, "should I be worried now? Because Mom always says I should ask an adult if I'm not sure when to be worried." Rex looked at this 8-year-old girl who was asking permission to be scared while pirates closed in from all directions, and felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't panic, exactly. It was more like the cold, calculating fury that had made him a legend in certain military circles. "Nah, kiddo," Rex said, surprised by how calm his own voice sounded. "Just stay buckled in and keep Nibbles close. Uncle Rex is going to handle this. Transport vessel, you have 30 seconds to comply before we open fire." Rex keyed the communications panel. "Scar, you magnificent bastard, still picking on defenseless cargo haulers, I see." There was a pause, followed by what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Well, well. Rex Murphy, I should have known the Federation would send their favorite war dog to babysit. This makes things considerably more interesting. I'm flattered by the reputation, but we both know this is just a transport run. What do you want?" "What I want, Murphy, is the very valuable cargo you're carrying. Specifically, the daughter of Doctors Elena and Carlos Rodriguez, currently researching some very classified xenobiology projects that certain interested parties would pay handsomely to know more about." Rex felt his stomach drop into his boots. This wasn't random piracy. This was a targeted kidnapping, planned and executed with military precision, Someone had sold out the Rodriguez family, and by extension, their 8-year-old daughter. Scar, she's a kid. Even you have standards. Standards are expensive, Murphy, and my employer is paying very well for this particular contract. Stand down your weapons and prepare for boarding. Rex looked at his control panel, mentally cataloging their options. The Steady Eddie was a cargo hauler, not a warship. Her shields were designed to deflect space debris, not military-grade plasma cannons. Her weapons consisted of 2 light laser turrets that might, on a good day, annoy a pirate cruiser. In short, they had about as much chance in a straight fight as a snowball in a supernova. "Captain," Squinsk whispered, "perhaps we should consider the diplomatic approach? Surrender now, negotiate for better treatment later?" Rex almost laughed. Squeaks, bless his chitinous heart, still believed the universe was fundamentally reasonable. Squeaks, these aren't the kind of pirates who negotiate. They're the kind who bill you for the ammunition they use to shoot your escape pods. Then what do we do? Rex glanced back at Mika again. She had unbuckled herself and was now whispering something to Nibbles, who was listening with the kind of intense focus that most creatures reserved for potential prey. There was something about the way the small animal held itself that nagged at Rex's military instincts, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what. "Murphy," Scar's voice crackled over the comm again. "Time's up. Cutting engines now, or I start putting holes in your hull." All right, Rex said, making his decision. "Powering down engines, but Scar, if anything happens to the kid..." "Spare me the threats, Murphy. Just follow my instructions and everyone stays breathing." Rex killed the engines and felt the Steady Eddie drift to a stop. Within minutes, he could hear the distinctive thunk of docking clamps engaging with their airlock. The pirates were coming aboard, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop them. Except apparently Mika had other ideas. "Captain Murphy," she said, in the kind of whisper that suggested she was about to propose something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. "I have a plan." Rex looked at her serious 8-year-old face and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's life support systems. In his experience, when humans said they had a plan, it usually meant someone was about to do something that violated several laws of physics and at least one Geneva Convention. "Kid, maybe you should just stay quiet and let the adults handle it." "Nipples says they made a big mistake," Nico interrupted, and her smile was absolutely terrifying. "They don't know what he really is." Before Rex could ask what she meant, the airlock cycled open, and 6 heavily armed pirates poured onto the bridge, followed by Captain Scar himself. Scar was exactly as Rex remembered, a 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmare, with scars that told stories, and eyes that suggested the stories all had unhappy endings. "Murphy," Scar said conversationally, "always a pleasure. Secure the bridge, and prep the cargo for transfer." "Scar," Rex replied, raising his hands in surrender, "you're making a mistake. The kid's parents are scientists, not weapons developers. What's this really about?" "This is about a very generous contract for one very specific little girl," Scar said, looking directly at Mika. "Hello there, sweetheart. Don't worry, this will all be over soon." Nico looked up at the massive pirate captain with the fearless curiosity of human young, clutching Nibbles to her chest. "Are you the bad guy my mom told me about?" Scar laughed, the sound like rocks in a cement mixer. "I suppose I am, little one. But don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. You're far too valuable." "Oh," Nika said thoughtfully. "That's too bad." "Too bad for who?" Nika's smile got wider. "Too bad for you, because now Nibbles is angry." And that's when Rex noticed that the small furry creature in Mika's arms had gone completely, utterly still. Not the stillness of fear or submission, but the stillness of a predator deciding exactly how to kill its prey. What happened next would later be classified in Galactic Federation files under incidents that defy reasonable explanation and used as a cautionary tale in military academies across 7 star systems. Miko Rodriguez, 8 years old and approximately 3 feet of pure human determination, looked Captain Scar dead in his cold reptilian eyes and said, "You should probably let us go now." Scar's throat sac inflated with amusement. "Should I now? And why is that, little human?" "Because," Nika said with the patience of someone explaining basic math to a particularly slow adult, "you made Nibbles mad, and when Nibbles gets mad, people get hurt." The pirates erupted in laughter. Rex couldn't blame them. From their perspective, they were being threatened by a small child with what appeared to be the galaxy's fluffiest teddy bear. Even Rex had to admit it looked ridiculous. Right up until the ship's lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in 2 seconds later, bathing everything in hellish red, but in those 2 seconds of absolute darkness, Rex heard sounds that would haunt his dreams for years. Not screams exactly, more like the sound you'd expect if someone had crossed a blender with a chainsaw and given it anger management issues. When the lights came back on, Nico was gone, Nibbles was gone, and two of Scar's pirates were unconscious on the floor, with what looked like bite marks on their armor. "What the hell just happened?" Scar roared, his weapons sweeping the bridge. Rex, who had seen some truly bizarre things in his military career, could only shake his head. "I think," he said slowly, "we just learned why human children don't come with warning labels. They're the warning labels." "Find them," Scar snarled at his remaining crew. "Search every compartment, every vent, every storage locker. They're just a child and a pet." Rex almost felt sorry for them. Almost. What the pirates didn't understand was that human children were basically tiny chaos engines powered by curiosity and an absolute inability to recognize reasonable limits. Add in what was apparently not actually a pet, and you had a combination that defied most known laws of physics and several laws of common sense. The search lasted exactly 4 minutes before the ship's internal communication system crackled to life with Mika's voice. Sweet as sugar and twice as dangerous. "Attention bad guys," she announced cheerfully. "This is your captain speaking. Well, your new captain. The old captain is mean and smells like fish food." Scar's face cycled through several shades of purple that Rex was pretty sure weren't medically advisable. "How did she access the comm system?" Rex shrugged. "Human kids are like water. They find the cracks in everything and flow through them. Plus, her parents are scientists. She probably knows more about electronics than your average engineer." "Captain Murphy," Nika's voice continued over the intercom. "Nibbles says to tell you that the pirates made a big mistake. They assumed we were helpless." "And are you?" Rex called out, genuinely curious about the answer. "Well," Mika said thoughtfully, "I'm 8, so I can't drive or vote or stay up past 9 on school nights. But I can jury-rig a plasma conduit, reprogram a navigation computer, and I've read all of Mom's xenobiology textbooks. Also, Nibbles is really, really good at hide-and-seek." As if to emphasize the point, the ship's gravity briefly cut out, sending the remaining pirates floating toward the ceiling in a tangle of arms, legs, and creative profanity. "She shut down artificial gravity from inside the ventilation system," Squeaks whispered in what sounded like religious awe. "That requires accessing 3 separate control nodes simultaneously." "Yeah, well, human kids don't really respect the concept of impossible," Rex said. "They just treat it as a suggested difficulty level." The gravity came back on, dropping the pirates back to the floor with satisfying thuds. Scar picked himself up and activated his wrist communicator. "All units, we have a Code 7 situation. The cargo has gone rogue." "Sir," came a nervous voice from the comm. "What exactly is a Code 7? "It means," Scar growled, "that somehow an 8-year-old human and her pet have taken tactical control of our boarding operation." Rex had to admire Scar's honesty, even if the situation was rapidly approaching levels of absurd that would make a comedy writer weep with joy. "Attention pirates," Nika's voice chirped over the intercom again. "I'm going to count to 10, and then Nibbles is going to start getting creative. 1, 2... "She's bluffing," one of the pirates muttered. "What's the worst a kid and a pet can do?" Rex, who had spent enough time around human families to understand the terrifying power of determined children, started backing toward the nearest bulkhead. "You know, in my experience, when a human kid starts counting down, the smart money is on running. 3, 4... Nibbles says 5 is his favorite number. 5. "Sir," came another voice over Skur's communicator. "We're getting reports of something moving through the air ducts. It's fast, and it's making really disturbing noises. 6, 7... Nibbles wants me to tell you that he's not actually from Earth. 8. Rex felt a chill run down his spine. Not from Earth? He looked at Scar, who was beginning to look less confident and more like someone who was rapidly realizing he might have made a career-defining mistake. 9. Nika's voice was still sweet, still cheerful, still absolutely terrifying in the way that only human children could manage. "Wait," Rex called out. "Mika, what do you mean Nibbles isn't from Earth?" There was a pause, and when Mika spoke again, her voice carried the kind of innocence that made experienced adults dive for cover. "Oh," she said brightly. "Daddy found him on one of the Outer Rim research stations, the one where they were studying apex predator behavioral patterns. Nibbles was really lonely, and the other scientists were kind of scared of him, but I thought he was cute. He really likes hugs and bedtime stories and making mean people go away." Rex closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to request a transfer to inventory duty. 10, Nico announced. And somewhere, in the walls of the ship, something that definitely wasn't a pet, began to laugh. The laughter stopped. What came next was the sound of rending metal, followed by several pirates screaming in languages that Rex was pretty sure didn't have words for what they were experiencing. "Scar," Rex said conversationally, "you ever hear of a honey badger?" "A what?" Scar snapped, his weapon trained on the ceiling, where something was clearly moving through the ventilation system with the subtle grace of a freight train. "Honey badger. Little furry creature from Earth, about the size of a small dog, looks cute and harmless, has exactly one setting when threatened." Rex paused for dramatic effect. Nuclear. The ventilation grate above them exploded outward in a shower of metal fragments. What dropped through wasn't the adorable teddy bear creature that had been snuggling in Mika's arms. This was 2 feet of concentrated fury wrapped in deceptively fluffy fur, with claws that could shred titanium, and teeth that were designed by evolution specifically to make other creatures reconsider their life choices. Its eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that suggested it had been playing dumb this entire time, and it was done pretending. "Oh, hell," one of the pirates whispered. "Meet Nibbles," Nika said, dropping down through the same grate with the casual athleticism of human young. "He's what Mommy calls a Terran honey badger. The Federation classifies them as a Class A aggressive species with diplomatic immunity." "Diplomatic immunity?" Squeaks chittered from his corner. "Yeah," Mika said brightly, "because apparently every time someone tries to arrest one, it ends really badly for everyone involved, so they just made it illegal to bother them." Nibbles fixed his gaze on Captain Scar and made a sound that was part growl, part purr, and entirely terrifying. Rex had heard that sound exactly once before, during a wildlife documentary that had required 3 camera crews because the first 2 had fled in terror. "The thing about honey badgers," Rex explained to the rapidly paling pirates, "is that they don't have a flight response. They literally don't understand the concept of retreat. You threaten them, they destroy you. You threaten their family, they destroy everything you've ever loved. It's not personal, it's just ecology." Scar, to his credit, tried to maintain some semblance of authority. "It's one small animal. How dangerous can it be?" Nibbles tilted his head, considering the question. Then he looked at Mika, who nodded. "Show them the demonstration Daddy taught us," she said. What followed was a masterclass in why evolution had designed honey badgers as nature's ultimate problem solvers. Nibbles moved like liquid violence, disarming 3 pirates before they could even register that he'd moved. The 4th pirate's weapon simply disintegrated in his hands, reduced to component molecules by claws that violated several laws of metallurgy. The 5th pirate, showing more wisdom than his colleagues, dropped his weapon and assumed the galactic position of surrender. "Holy Mother of Moons," Scar breathed. "What is that thing?" "Nibbles is my emotional support animal," Nico explained patiently. "He supports my emotions by making sure nobody makes me sad. Daddy says honey badgers are Earth's way of teaching the universe about consequences." Rex watched as this 8-year-old child and her impossibly dangerous pet worked together with the kind of seamless coordination that suggested years of practice. Nico would point, Nibbles would neutralize. It was like watching a tiny, terrifying ballet. "The thing is," Nico continued conversationally as Nibbles systematically dismantled the pirate boarding party, "humans and honey badgers have what Mommy calls compatible psychology. We both get really upset when people threaten our families, and we both have creative approaches to problem solving." Commander Threx, who had been conspicuously quiet during this entire demonstration, finally found his voice. "Murphy," he said in the tone of someone whose worldview was undergoing rapid and unwelcome revision, "perhaps I was mistaken about human defensive capabilities." "You think?" Rex replied. "Threx, meet the reason the Galactic Council classified humans as a potentially dangerous species. We don't fight fair, we don't know when to quit, and we make friends with things that scare the rest of the universe." Scar, apparently deciding that discretion was indeed the better part of valor, activated his retreat signal. "All units, fall back to the ships. Mission abort. Repeat, mission abort." "Oh," Nico said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "They're leaving. But Nibbles was just getting warmed up." Nibbles made what Rex could only describe as a disappointed sigh, the kind of sound that suggested he'd been looking forward to showing off some of his more advanced techniques. As the surviving pirates fled back to their ships with the kind of haste usually reserved for escaping supernovas, Rex realized he was witnessing the birth of a legend. Somewhere in the galaxy there were going to be pirate bars where grizzled criminals would whisper stories about the day Captain Scar's crew got routed by an 8-year-old and her pet. And the really terrifying part? This was probably just a typical Tuesday for Mika Rodriguez and her emotional support honey badger. The pirates made it exactly halfway back to their ships before Mika decided they hadn't learned their lesson properly. "Nibbles," she said in the tone most kids reserved for asking about dessert. "Want to make sure they don't try this again?" Nibbles' response was a sound that Rex's military training identified as pure predatory joy. What followed was less a counterattack and more a educational seminar titled "Why You Don't Mess with Human Family Units." Nika commandeered the ship's external cameras while Nibbles somehow managed to breach the pirates' airlocks, turning their own vessels into hunting grounds. "Captain," Squeaks whispered, his compound eyes glued to the tactical display, "are we watching an 8-year-old child conduct a military operation?" "No," Rex said, mesmerized by the systematic efficiency of it all. "We're watching a human child protect her family. There's a difference. One follows the Geneva Convention." On the main screen, they watched pirate after pirate surrender to what their sensors registered as one small mammalian life form, moving through their ships like a furry hurricane. Mika provided tactical coordination from the steady eddy, calling out escape routes and weak points with the cheerful precision of a seasoned commander. "Target left corridor, Nibbles, 3 pirates with stun weapons. Oh, and the tall one has a really big gun." The tall one's really big gun lasted approximately 4 seconds before becoming what engineers would politely call component particles. "Mika," Rex called out, "maybe we should dial it back a notch? They're already surrendering." "Are they surrendering to us, or are they just running away?" Nika asked, with the philosophical insight that only children could bring to tactical situations. Rex consulted the tactical display, where 7 pirate ships were now broadcasting general distress signals while their crews abandoned ship in escape pods. "I'm going to go with running away." "Then they haven't learned yet," Miko decided. "Nibbles' priority target is the command ship." Within minutes, Captain Scar's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "This is Captain Scar to any Federation vessels in range. We formally surrender to the human child and her demon creature. Please, for the love of all that's holy, make them stop." Rex keyed the comm. "Scar, you magnificent coward. What happened to all that professional pirate confidence?" "Murphy," Scar's voice was strained, "in 30 years of piracy, I have never seen anything like this. The creature moves through solid bulkheads. The child has somehow reprogrammed our life support to play nursery rhymes. They've turned our own ships against us." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Rex said. "Human kids are basically tiny force multipliers with no concept of proportional response." "We surrender," Scar repeated. "Complete and unconditional surrender to the small human and her terrifying pet." Mika looked up from her improvised command console, pigtails somehow still perfect despite orchestrating the routing of an entire pirate fleet. "Should we accept their surrender, Captain Murphy?" Rex looked at this 8-year-old girl who had just conducted a flawless counter-offensive using nothing but ingenuity and one very motivated honey badger, and realized that human children weren't just protected by their parents and the Federation. They were protected by the fundamental forces of chaos and determination that made humans the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. "Yeah, kid," Rex said, grinning despite himself. "I think we can accept their surrender." 3 hours later, Rex was filling out the most unusual incident report of his 30-year career, while Mika shared her emergency chocolate with Nibbles, who had returned to his adorable teddy bear mode like nothing had happened. "So let me get this straight," came the voice of Admiral Chen over subspace comm. "The Crimson Claw Syndicate, one of the most feared pirate organizations in the Outer Rim, was defeated by an 8-year-old and her pet?" "Her emotional support honey badger," Rex corrected. "There's apparently a difference." "And they're now requesting immediate transfer to maximum security prison rather than risk any further contact with human family units?" Rex glanced at Mika, who was teaching Nibbles how to play patty cake. "That's correct, Admiral. Captain Scar specifically requested protective custody from what he called tiny humans and their nightmare pets." There was a long pause. "Murphy, are you filing this report under comedy or cautionary tale?" "Both, sir. Definitely both." When they finally reached the research station, Dr. Elena Rodriguez met them at the docking bay with the kind of smile that suggested she already knew exactly what had happened. "How was the trip, sweetheart?" she asked, sweeping Mika into a hug. "It was educational," Nico replied seriously. "I learned that pirates don't do their research very well, and Nibbles learned some new games. And Captain Murphy learned why we don't underestimate human children," Rex added, watching as Nibbles received scratches behind the ears from Dr. Rodriguez like he hadn't just dismantled an entire pirate fleet. Dr. Rodriguez laughed. Captain, honey badgers have been humanity's unofficial ambassadors to the galaxy for years. They're excellent at explaining our foreign policy. Which is, don't mess with our families, and we won't mess with your entire civilization. Rex looked at the official commendation he'd received for successfully defending Federation citizens against pirate assault and shook his head. The commendation didn't mention that his primary contribution had been staying out of the way, while an 8-year-old and her pet handled the situation with ruthless efficiency. 6 months later, Rex was reviewing applications for his new position as Director of Human Colony Defense, when he noticed an addendum to the latest Galactic Federation Threat Assessment database. Under Species to avoid provoking under any circumstances, someone had added a new entry: human cubs, particularly those traveling with emotional support animals. The recommendation was simple. Do not engage, do not threaten, do not even make prolonged eye contact. Treat as you would a supernova with abandonment issues. Rex approved the addition and made a note to send a copy to every pirate organization in known space. It was, he figured, only fair to give them a fighting chance. After all, the galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Never corner a human cub, especially when they've brought their honey badger.